Orders up!
Kookaburra Café by Big Al's Story. Long black in a latte glass with the tiniest dash of full cream milk. Standing beside his table, she smiles. It's the same coffee order every day, but her commitment to repeat it before heading off to order always makes him smile. Their eye contact is friendly, but he searches deeper. Every day deeper for something more to connect with. This morning, like most mornings, the moment rests quietly. In the silence they find it. A few short seconds of togetherness.
Orders up!
The kitchen manager's narrow voice echoes through the atrium of the hospital. The Kookaburra Café sits on the ground floor of the hospital, but it holds an unspoken authority. Natural light pours into the space like water falling through an expansive canyon of glass and brick. Down past the indoor tree the light cascades. As it touches the seats and the counter, it ignites a warmth that heats the cold hospital from the inside. The sounds of the Kookaburra Café give back to the hospital in a familiar but unidentifiable way. The coffee machine, the blips of the FPOS, and even the kitchen manager's screechy voice, they all create an atmosphere that attracts him every morning. She clunks a plate of bacon and eggs onto the stainless steel counter and looks directly at him, her stocky arms slightly bent as her soft hands rest on the bench. She remains for a moment with a bend in her back, staring through the order window. Every morning their eyes meet, and then she pushes away from the counter and returns to the bubbling energy of the kitchen. In the sea of outdoor tables he sits alone with his coffee, a long black in a latte glass, with the tiniest dash of full cream milk. Looking at the only other customer, he sips his first sip and looks deeper through the back of her head. He ponders at her age, 65 plus, he imagines. Exhaling the warmth of his coffee, he grins and says the words through his breath. Far too old for this 58-year-old. On his second sip, he starts to piece together her 65 years of existence. Behind his eyes he sits, recreating her life in a matter of breaths. A place of birth, a first kiss, a career. He's heard the kitchen manager's laugh split the morning air many times before. It used to yank him from the depths of thought, but now it just annoys him. This morning his thoughts simply adjust. A few seconds ago he was recreating the life of an unknown lady. Right now he's reflecting on his own. Place of birth, Brisbane. First job, delivering papers. Career, philosophy lecturer. Traumatic life event, divorce at 32. Another sight gently shakes him out of writing his autobiography. She's just paid for his coffee and smiles as she walks smoothly back towards him. Joanne, he states deeply under his breath. A 30-year-old nurse from the mental unit, friendly, attractive, thoughtful, the perfect woman in his eyes. On her way past, she glances at him and pats him on the shoulder. She says nothing as she makes her way back to the mental ward. Looking straight ahead, he listens to the familiar sounds of her bipping at the security door. The sounds are familiar, but he knows the codes for the door about as much as he knows the codes for love. As it clunks shut, the mixed feelings of abandonment, freedom and safety close in. In no man's land between the mental institution and the kitchen of the Kookaburra Café is where he remains. Another cackling laugh pulls his attention back to exactly where he is. Every morning her voice echoes off the walls and objects within the space. Like a piece of ruminating furniture, he sits quietly, witnessing her sounds reverberate through his aging frame. His neck arches to look at the centerpiece. It's a 6-metre tree standing in a raised garden bed. He's longed to see the irony of a kookaburra sitting on its branches, but it's never happened. Like the sparrows that constantly orbit the tree, his mind has for years remained busy. How could such a healthy tree thrive in such an artificial environment? His most current thesis is that an exacting blend of coffee fumes, laughter, and conversation hold the branches firmly in place. If the hospital ever shut down, he posits, there would no longer be people walking around. Therefore, it would definitely fall over. He exhales and reminds himself of the courtyard cafeteria at the university that he lectured at. There was no tree in that space, but many people circled his table. In those days, people generally wanted to have coffee with him, and if he sat alone, people noticed. Although many people circulated, only a select few ever thought strongly enough to actually flock to his table. This morning, like every other morning, the coffee machine sits in its spot under the tree. Like a moored boat, it rests beside the brick wall of the raised garden bed. In the early hours, they wheel it out on its trolley and raise the umbrella like the sail of a majestic ship. A few well-placed plants and witty coffee posters make it look like a permanent fixture. The water for the coffee machine comes from a pipe installed in the garden bed. The electric lines snake under a huge black mat, around the side of the tables and back inside the cafe. It took him many months to give up pondering why they didn't just install the coffee machine inside. But in this moment, he wouldn't have it any other way. The hissing steam, the bashing of the grind, it all contributes to the morning symphony playing in the atrium. The sound of her laughter shifts his thoughts again. He stares at the young woman behind the coffee machine. Bailey, 23, student, black-rimmed glasses, brown hair, bright, oversized Kookaburra earrings, Doc Martens. She moves efficiently and careful, beautiful. Even though she is the main reason for his morning coffee, he gave up long ago. Every morning she'd send him stares through her green eyes. The steam rising around her glowed in an almost comically beautiful light. She stared back, far longer and far more often than he thought was acceptable. He openly accepted every instant of their eye contact, but he refused to accept that the looks she gave were just simple friendliness. Over the months, her beauty became so ludicrous that he just gave up. He gave up wanting to know why the coffee machine was wheeled out every day, and he gave up on the slim chance of ever getting to know her deeper. This morning, he simply watches everything. The still breeze inching through the tree, the sliding doors being pushed and pulled by the nervous energy of the morning, the health professionals bustling around even as they wait for coffee. But when his eyes catch Bailey's, he doesn't hold back. Their eye contact is intense, but so innocent that he has no choice but to simply smile. With a flutter in his heart, he looks deeper into his coffee. The dash of white continues folding into the black to form a beautiful clouded mystery.
Orders up!
This time her voice shocks him. There's no one to give the order to. The 65-year-old lady left a few minutes ago. One of the waiters grabs the plate and brings it swiftly to his table. With a cheeky smile, she places it down. Carrot cake with cream. Thanks, but I didn't order anything. The girl smiles and returns to the kitchen. He looks at the carrot cake and then back at the cafe. Not a single soul to be seen. Bailey gives him a knowing grin from her position at the coffee machine. A noisy composition of squabbling, hushes and whispers streams from the kitchen. She steps into the eating area slowly. This is the first time he's seen the kitchen manager's full body. She takes off her apron and places it on the stainless steel counter. With instant timing, a hand grabs it and pulls it back into the kitchen of whispers. Standing there, it's obvious that her hands have no place to be. She's naked without her apron, a stranded ship, a vulnerable warrior with no stainless steel kitchen for armour. With no immediate job to occupy her hands, she has no reason to crack into another fit of laughter. Black sneakers, strong ankles and thick legs. Her thighs hold a shape under her dress uniform. He imagines her huge breasts splayed across her chest. They're huge, but they don't stick out too far from her uniform. Her solid barrel of a torso and functional bra hold them firmly in place. Brown and grey hair. Her skin is old but smooth like the surface of a gum tree. Looking into her eyes, he's not sure what she's broadcasting. Is she calm or cold? She blinks, but doesn't move. She walks towards him and pauses next to the cake. After an awkward moment, he offers her a seat. "Please, sit down. Make yourself at home," he says. "I'm not a fan of carrot cake anyway." She sits and looks straight into his eyes. He can't tell if she's grumpy, but as their eyes begin to rest, his shoulders sink into a deep relaxation. "Do you come here often?" he asks, with a giggle in his voice. "I come here every day," she says calmly. They share another moment. He takes a slightly nervous sip of his coffee and puts it back on the saucer. They both watch as the coffee splits into two colours, deep brown on the bottom and light brown on top. In a matter-of-fact way, he offers the statement, "The coffee's really good here." Immediately, he jumps in his chair. Never has he been so close to the epicentre of her space-shaping laughter. Every cackle cascades new emotions through his body. Shock, awe, self-awareness, humour, acceptance, bliss. Even the way she recuperates after her outburst is addictive. Small recovery breaths through her relaxed smile as though what she just did was God's work itself. Every breath a refill, a joyful and pensive build to her next outburst. She wipes her eyes and says, "Yeah, great coffee. Bailey takes a lot of pride in her work." He looks at his coffee for a moment and considers finishing it, without speaking. He could just sit with his new friend and wait for her outbursts to break up the silence. Out of the quietness, Bailey appears, her oversized kookaburra earrings swinging from her ears. She places a tea with a side of milk down. The crockery clacks and the spoon clinks. Steam leaks from the teapot and adds to a feeling of ceremony. The sound of Bailey's Doc Martens trail away from the table. "Pleased to meet you. My name is Robert. And your name is?" Her eyes quiz him like he's setting up a joke. "My name is Karen." She casually picks up the side of milk and splashes a few drops in her tea. The intricate swirling pulls her attention in. He leans forward to look down upon the patterns unfolding. A deep contrast of clouds and monotony explode before them. A deep moment of unknown duration leaves them gently soaking. Looking up, they meet somewhere on common ground, deep in each other's eyes. She leans into her seat. "So what's your story?" she asks. Instinctively, he sits up straighter. "Well, at 36, I was a lecturer of philosophy. I was married, I had it all. But me being me, I wanted more." Karen flashes her eyes towards the reflective window of the mental unit. "And what happened? You know, I thought we'd be together forever. I wanted it to be forever. But I just couldn't bear it." She lectured feminist studies and told me plain and straight, she just didn't want kids. We were just two committed partners in an unloving relationship. Similar commitment, different ideas. Karen sips her tea and asks, "So what did you do next?" Robert exhales as he continues his autobiography. "My first relationship after my wife was with a lady that worked in the admin of our arts faculty. I left her almost straight away." Karen calmly says, "Well, that's not that bad. People go their separate ways all the time." Leaning back and glancing her eyes towards the mental unit, she says, "So how did you end up going crazy and end up in the nut house?" "Well, I loved that she loved working. We actually got along really well when we were at work. Everyone loved us as a couple. But she simply didn't want to give her job up just to have kids. She said she didn't really even mind kids, but she just wasn't willing to stop her work to have them. I didn't really mind to begin with, you know, each to their own. I knew there'd be someone else out there for me." "It was a lady from the science faculty." "Oh, yeah, she worked in admin too. She was a lot of fun. The sex was..." Karen brings her eyes up from her tea and waits. "The sex was awesome," he states as he gazes off into his memories. "So you obviously didn't stay with her either." "She got pregnant real fast, and she got the abortion real fast, without telling me." "Oh," Karen says. "We spoke about contraception before we got in the bedroom, but we never spoke about abortion. I'm not even necessarily against abortion, but she just went ahead and did it before she even told me. And what happened next? Well, that's when things got a bit challenging. I dated a student. Karen calmly raises her eyebrow with curiosity. And how did that go for you? She asks. It went really well for a month or two. We even moved into a tiny apartment outside the city. I said I'd never leave her, and I never did. Well, what happened? She left me. I woke up one morning and all her stuff was gone. She said she just couldn't connect. She said she felt like my daughter. I thought we had a great connection, but she just wasn't into it. She said she'd keep it all quiet, hush hush. And did she? She did, until she found out I saw 2 other students. Oh, wow. So how did you end up here, in the mental unit? Robert pauses slightly. Well, at this very moment, I'm not in the mental unit. I'm outside. I'm having coffee between the mental unit and the Kookaburra Café. Karen grins. My cafe extends from the kitchen all the way out here to these tables and chairs. You're in my cafe. Robert looks around. So I am. So what happened? Asks Karen. Looks were never a big thing for me, but when I started looking for looks, I guess I couldn't stop looking. So who'd you date next? He sits up straighter and says, I joined a gym. She was interesting. Great sex, but still no kids. We actually had a lot in common. We both wanted kids. We both were outcasts. Neither of us knew how to quit anything. But we just weren't good for each other. When we entered bodybuilding comps, we had to cut weight. We just went crazy. Karen smiles and looks at the window of the institution again. Robert ignores her and carries on down memory lane. I stopped having sex. She was okay with that, but when I stopped entering comps with her, she just wouldn't have it. When she knew I wanted to break up, she just wouldn't let it happen. She didn't know how to quit properly, and neither did I. And what happened? Karen asks. Well, she had a thing for lats. When her lats got bigger than mine, she left me for another guy, with bigger lats. Each to their own, I guess, says Karen. She flexes her bicep. Not too shabby, he says. She rubs her bicep and asks, So who'd you date next? Well, I started to run out of funds. I spent so much time at the gym, I thought I may as well start working at one. I got a job at a different gym and met another woman. Oh yeah? Yeah, she was taller than me, but my lats were quite a bit bigger. She's the one that introduced me to ice. Oh yeah, I knew plenty of chefs on that stuff. Yeah, it's not good, he says as he plays with the handle of his coffee. After a momentary pause, he looks back at Karen and says, Sends you in a very strange direction indeed. It does, she states. Keeps you sailing straight ahead. The wind falls out of your sail, but you float along on a flat line, paddling harder and harder to do it. You plug the holes and keep on paddling just enough to move in a direction. Then one day you wake up and stop looking at the horizon. Your eyes look back at you through the dirty mirror. They're your eyes, but they're surrounded by dirty hair and patchy skin. It hits you slow at first, like water gushing through the planks. It moves over your bare feet and up past your knees and your lats. And when you're fully submerged, reality hits. In a moment, you realise you've been paddling so hard because you've been scraping along the bottom for 6 months. Was that your rock bottom? Sitting in silence, he looks deep through his coffee before responding. No, he says. My lady friend was lucky enough to keep on sailing. She kept her job in warehousing. The ice gave her excess energy to scrape out a few ludicrous gym sessions per week. I had more than enough energy to work at the gym and to do my own workout every day, and that was the problem. I was paddling so hard that I couldn't really speak properly. They wouldn't let me work with the female clients either. When I made an advance on my manager, she just fired me. What was that like? To tell you the truth, it was a bit of a letdown. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't start rumours. She just said, I hope you get some help, but you can't work here anymore. Was that your rock bottom? No, not at all. I didn't hit rock bottom till I met my match. Who was she? She was a beam of light. I was bumbling along the bottom of life, offending everyone I met, or loved, or even thought of loving. I was under the bridge for a few days, and I looked at this woman. I didn't even know I had lust in my eyes. Maybe I didn't. But she just stood up, walked over, and kicked me in the chest. Her foot came down on me like a bolt of lightning. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. She just kicked me again and again and punched me in the face. Was she your shining light? Robert looks at Karen directly and says, No, she wasn't. Well, I have to get back to work soon. You'd better hurry up and get to the rock bottom bit or the shining light bit. Robert looks down at his coffee, almost empty. Karen sips her last bit of tea and asks, What did you say your carer's name is? The one that lets you out here? He takes the last mouthful and says the name straight to her. Joanne. Well, why don't you see if Joanne will let you come to the smoking area at 1:30, after lunch? You can finish the story there, the bit about the shining light. He turns on his chair to look at the reflective window of the mental unit. Yeah, I guess I could. I look forward to it. 1:30, Karen says as she leaves. Back in the mental unit, Robert sits with Joanne on the hard couch. Behind the reflective window, they blankly stare at the seating area of the Kookaburra Café. Robert's eyes remain still as he says, I've learnt a lot through this window. I know, Joanne says quietly with a smile. You know, it's almost as if this window was put here on purpose, just so we could learn from the normal people. I know, Joanne says. He looks at the early lunch crowd sitting down with their food. The silent scene pulls at his attention through the glass. In the distance, Bailey bashes away at the coffee machine. I know, Joanne whispers. The other staff in the unit watch on in concern. It's been years since Robert has spoken to Joanne like this. The staff continue their routines while nervously glancing at each other and then back to the couch. The other patients instinctively avoid the TV room altogether. Joanne speaks with a tone of understanding. Maybe this smoking area this afternoon is a good idea. Robert's eyes remain fixed on nothing, but all the while staring out the window. Yeah, maybe it is, he says. You know you've come a very long way since you were first admitted here, Robert. Yeah, I know. You were in solitary for 6 months. We never thought you'd make it to this couch, let alone the seats of the Kookaburra Café. But you did it. Yep, I know. And you did it all by yourself. He humps a single breath of laughter. We both know I couldn't have done it without you, Joanne. You're the only woman that's never left me. He looks straight into her eyes. I know we could never leave this place together, but why not? You know why, Robert. I just can't. It's that simple. He pauses and looks back out the window before saying, Yeah, I know. You can do this, Robert. Go for it. We've all been waiting for you to go beyond. You've almost worn out your welcome at the table at the Kookaburra anyway. Robert continues watching intently at nothing and exhales. What are you scared of? She asks. Everything. She's not my type. I've only just met her. Joanne leans in closer. But I just couldn't be abandoned again. I've come so far. Looking around at his clinical surroundings, he admits, I'm sort of happy with my current rock bottom. Joanne speaks with a calm knowing and an authority. You can always find a new rock bottom. Go for it. We will always be here. Walking through the seating area, he does his best to avoid eye contact with Bailey. Whether it's instinct or sheer beauty, he finds himself deeply in her eye contact again. She smiles with a thumbs up and walks towards him with a takeaway coffee cup. Just the way you like it, she says. Oh, thank you, Bailey. I couldn't find any see-through cardboard. You'll just have to do with this. Too nervous to drink, he carries it through the corridors like it's a newborn baby. The plainness of the hallways scares him. Some look familiar from the outings he's gone on with Joanne. Some are completely unfamiliar. None of the experience is comforting. Joanne's voice echoes with every step. Go for it. Go for it. When he's deep inside the hospital, he realises he really has no idea where the smoking area is, or even how many smoking areas there might be. Assuming it's somewhere on the other side, he walks forward, one step at a time. He can't smell smoke, he can't see people smoking, but then he hears it. Her laugh is familiar, but fails to comfort his nerves. At the side of the hospital, under an enormous fig tree, it sits. On a strip of grass between a garden bed and the concrete footpath is the smoking area. The boundaries look as hazy as the smoke it contains. A few patients stand in robes, and a well-dressed man with a lanyard sits content. Two nurses position their bodies towards each other, but stare at their phones and suck on cigarettes. Karen sits by herself on a fire hydrant pipe. Exhaling blue smoke, she extends her chin upwards and peers through the cloud. Catching his eye from across the driveway, she smiles. With a cigarette in her fingers, her hand moves backward, parting the veil of smoke for his entrance. As he moves across the driveway, familiar faces look back. He had no idea that the other inpatients from the unit came this far for their cigarette breaks. Their quiet smiles and encouraging thumb-ups encourage little more than a nod. Standing deep within the smoking area, he can't tell if the conversation stopped on his arrival or if it was permanently mute. Karen stubs her cigarette and places it in the communal Coke can. Without saying a word, she stands. She looks left, looks right, and makes her way across the road. As he steps onto the road, the collective energy of the smoking area doesn't budge. Like two high school kids, they walk down a small side street that heads away from the hospital. Karen sits on a small bench. Robert needs no encouraging to sit, but his body remains still. He looks nervously back at the hospital. Returning his eyes back to Karen, she pats the seat. Rock bottom or shining light? Tell me all about it. He sits. She lights a cigarette. He sips at Bailey's coffee. Through her first puff, she says, "She's a good kid, that Bailey." Calmly examining her cigarette, she continues, "You wouldn't believe how sure she was that I should come out here and get to know you. The darlin' even offered to work the till to make it all happen." Karen has another drag of her ciggy and settles deeper into the bench. Looking again at her cigarette, she says, "The crafty little thing even convinced the other girls that this was somehow beneficial for them." Robert sips from his cardboard cup. "Yeah, she's special all right. But anyway, we're not here to talk about her. Rock bottom, shining light, 30 minutes. Tell me all about it." Well, I couldn't really remember going in there. My first memory of the unit was just being in a space. It wasn't quite dark, wasn't really light. "Like a coma," Karen says as she quietly sucks her cigarette. Yeah. I think it was a combination of being beat up under the bridge and ice. I was just beat up by life, really. My body was just laying there, dead. I reckon the ice gave me just enough energy to poke my head up and have a look around. "So was this your rock bottom?" "No, far from it. Slowly they replaced the ice with their own drugs. I felt like I worked through several layers before I even opened my eyes properly. When I finally woke up, I could hear a woman's voice. I had no drugs, no women, no friends, just the jittery mess of my mind and body. My legs wouldn't move to begin with, but bit by bit I just took care of myself. Toileting, showers, breakfast, conversations. I just shuffled around one day at a time." Karen exhales slowly and asks, "Whose voice was it you could hear?" Robert ignores her and continues. "One day at a time. No girlfriends, no ice, no friends, no sex, no job, no nothing. I wouldn't even talk to women. The female staff, the female patients, I couldn't talk to them even if I wanted to. I just couldn't. My body wouldn't let me. except one. Karen turns slightly to look at him. Who was she? She asks. Joanne, he replies. They sit in silence as her name echoes between them. Joanne was the only one I could trust. She was there when I came back from the brink. She listened when I started stringing my words back together. She was there when I strung too many words together. Not a threat, not a bore, not too young, not too old, not too good looking, not too ugly, caring, intelligent. She sounds special. Was she your shining light? Not at all. I feel our lives conspired to put us in the unit together, but I'm not sure she was my shining light. Whatever I didn't say to the other women was certainly made up for with how much I spoke to Joanne. We spoke about everything. She just got me. Some of my favourite moments have been just folding washing with her, or washing up, or even watching TV together. Most of the time we didn't even look at each other. We'd just chat and carry on with our day. She always understood me, and when she didn't, she just listened. Sounds like she was your shining light, Karen says. Well, that's what I thought, until one Tuesday. What happened? Tuesdays were her rostered day off. If I needed to speak to someone and I couldn't find the one male nurse we had, I was forced to speak to the other female staff. I'm sure they coordinated it for this one Tuesday. They made sure that there were no males rostered on, but bit by bit throughout the day they let me know. Let you know what, says Karen. Robert turns to look directly in her eyes. They let me know that Joanne isn't real. She never was. Karen stubs out her cigarette and sits up straighter. But you said you spoke to her every day. You couldn't have done it without her. She was your shining light. I did speak to her every day, and I couldn't have done it without her, but she just didn't actually exist. She doesn't exist. Well, how did you go from believing she existed to believing she didn't exist so quickly? It took about a week. The staff all started to suggest that maybe she didn't exist. Then on that Tuesday, they just gave it to me, one piece of evidence at a time. They showed me the pigeonholes. No Joanne. The sign in and sign out book. No Joanne. The staff sign in and sign out book. No Joanne. They took me on a walk to ask both male and female patients if she existed. They all said she didn't. I started to think that they just told them to say that. But they showed me video footage, and that I couldn't dispute. There I was from the day before, folding my clothes in an empty room and talking to absolutely no one. Karen strikes up another cigarette and exhales a new cloud of smoke. And how did you take it? Her hand touches his knee, and he looks into her eyes again. So how did you take it? She asks. Not well. All in one afternoon I lost my best friend, my one true love, and I became fully aware that I'd completely lost my mind. That was my rock bottom. How long did it last? About a week. That was 3 years ago. So no shining light. No shining light. Well, there's my daily coffee. I do enjoy that. Bailey's as real as they come. She is special, Karen says, as she joins him staring at nothing. Exhaling another cloud, she looks straight ahead. The expression on her face changes slightly. Didn't you say that Joanne drops you at the cafe for your coffee every day? I did say that, but in reality, I've just been sitting down by myself. When Bailey sees me, she just brings my coffee over. Well, who's been paying for your coffee? She says curiously. Robert looks into her eyes again and says, Joanne's not real, Karen. I haven't been paying for my coffee. As she recovers, her curiosity returns. But if she really doesn't exist, then why did you say that she drops you off and pays for your coffee every morning? I guess I have a better relationship with her than I do with reality. She's a very special person. She drops me for my coffee, she listens, and she leaves me to just be. How often do you see her? Karen asks. Apart from her dropping me at coffee, I don't really see her much anymore. I'm aware she doesn't exist, but if I'm stressed or feeling really down, I just ask and she appears. She gets me. I see. Karen stubs out the cigarette. I don't mind if you think I'm crazy. I technically am, he says. Robert takes another swig of Bailey's coffee. Looking ahead at the greenery, they remain in silence. Karen exhales a lungful of smoke to maintain the smoking area. Robert smiles and says, "You know you meant to have the cigarette after sex." For a short moment they look through the smoke and into the curiosity of their eyes. With small smiles they look back across the road. "So you ask," Karen says, "and she appears. That's nice." Robert smiles at the sarcasm that she fails to mask. With a casual wisdom that only exists after many defeats, he repeats the idea. "I ask, and she appears." A woman steps onto the footpath across the road and walks calmly away from the hospital. Wearing a uniform from the mental unit, she walks in the exact manner of a nurse that has just finished a long shift. Friendly, attractive, thoughtful. She walks slowly but with purpose. Karen's cigarette droops from her lip as she pauses breath. Watching her walk down the street, Karen's neck arches slowly from left to right. Unblown smoke builds up around her shoulders. "I thought you said she's imaginary," she says nervously. "She's as real as bacon and eggs." "So Joanne is real?" "Well, that lady there's real. Her name's Sandra." Sensing her name through the thick smoke, she looks back across the road at the bench. A small wave, a smile and a thumbs up. Robert waves back and says, "Joanne is not real, but her influence on the staff of the mental unit has been very real." An unseen kookaburra echoes its laugh through the leafy green street. The coffee machine has been pushed back inside. The floors are mopped, and Bailey is stacking the last of the chairs. "Look who it is," she says. The three of them put the chairs back down on one of the tables. Karen puts the fourth chair down. "Just in case Joanne wants to join us," she says with a smile. The three of them spend moments sharing eye contact. Eventually breaking the silence, Bailey shares some kookaburra trivia. "Did you know that a kookaburra's laugh is not really a laugh?" Karen and Robert look at her, dumbfounded and curious. She continues, "Kookaburras live in small clans of about 5 to 6 birds. The so-called laughing is a territorial warning to other groups of kookaburras." Karen and Robert smile. Bailey continues, "The clans generally have a mating pair that are supported by the others." Karen pats Robert on the knee under the table. As they play in their eye contact, Bailey reveals more information. "My mum worked in the science faculty at the University of Queensland." Robert smiles through his confusion. "Robert, you're my dad." As they embrace in each other's arms, they cry. Their tears dissolve into a cacophony of sobbing laughter. Karen puts her arms around both of them. In her bosom and through the atrium the muted sounds can be heard. The laugh of a small group of beautiful humans echoing through Kookaburra Café. The end. in front of it? You want to run in front of it?